Uh, Tonight's going to be interesting mostly because I haven't planned it out. So I am going to be interested to hear what I say as much as you might be interested to hear what I say as well. So I like to take a look before I start so I can see who is here. And that really helps me to know who I'm speaking to and at what level I want to be teaching at and what I want to share. So it looks like a great mix of people. There's a lot of longtime practitioners here, some instructors. I see some folks that I haven't seen in a very long time. I see some folks that I don't know at all. Some folks that are sort of brand new. So welcome everybody, old and new. I promise today I'll try and speak to those of you who are new to this. Okay, and so those of you who have been around for a while, bear with me. This might be very repetitious, but as you know, the Dhamma is the Dhamma, the teachings are the teachings, the truth is the truth, and no matter how many times you hear it, depending on your practice, there will always be something for you to pick up and remember or learn. So I hope that that's true for everyone, and I hope that I share the teachings according to the truth and according to the correct teachings tonight. So the topic that I did this to myself. I told Jess I wanted to talk about defilements. And then a few moments ago, I was talking to Jen and thinking, wow, how do I really want to take this? Do I want to do a meditation tonight? What do I want to do? So I thought something quite interesting earlier. And that was, I had recalled a story that I had come across online. I'm going to share that story with you, and I'm going to do that now. Just to kind of give us, to set the stage a little bit for what we're going to talk about. So I'm going to read a little bit, just bear with me as I read this story. And this story came from the internet. It's not clear who wrote it, and I have zero interest in going to, down the rabbit hole to find out who it was, but whoever the author is, thank you very much for this story. So the story starts off like this. You're holding a cup of coffee when someone comes along and bumps into you and shakes your arm, making you spill coffee everywhere. Why did you spill the coffee? Because someone bumped into me, right? So this would be, in this context, it would be the wrong answer. You spilled the coffee because there was coffee in your cup. Had there been tea in your cup, you would have spilled tea. Whatever is inside the cup is what will spill out. Therefore, when life comes along and shakes you, which will happen, and just an aside, I had many shakings this week, and a pretty intense week, this will happen, whatever is inside you will come out. It's easy to fake it until you get rattled. So we have to ask ourselves, what's in my cup? When life, oh, and I just lost the story. There's some rattling right there, okay? When life gets tough, what spills over? Joy, gratitude, peace, humility, or anger, bitterness, victim mentality, or quitting tendencies? Life provides you a cup. You choose how to fill it. Today, let's work towards filling our cups with gratitude, forgiveness, joy, words of affirmation, resilience, positivity, and kindness, and gentleness, and love for others. Okay, so it's a really lovely story. It does point to a couple of important themes that I want to share. And one of them is about states of mind. And there are, in Buddhist Abhidhamma, which is the higher teachings, or the higher dhammas, the higher teachings in Buddhism, there are 72 conditioned phenomena. So 72 things that we can experience. And out of those 72, imagine, out of those 72, the mind is just one. Okay, so all this stuff that's going on in our mind is just one out of 72 things that we can experience. And it's the only one out of those 72 that is then further separated into, I think, 89 or 121 different distinctions. So when we think about all of these mental things that we can experience, the things we just heard in this story, right? Anger, greed, all of these types of things, happiness, joy, peace, loving kindness. These are examples of what the mind can experience. And out of those things, there are certain wholesome states. There are certain wholesome things that the mind can experience, and there are things that are unwholesome that the mind can experience. And the things that the mind experiences that are unwholesome are called defilements of the mind. Okay. Now, this word, when I first heard it, I didn't have such a strong reaction to it, but whenever my teacher talks about it, he talks about it as being a very heavy and a very scary and serious and intense word, until I actually took a look at the word in my mind and actually rolled around with the word and thought about it a little bit. And defilements, actually, when you look at the word, it means something that has sullied or dirtied or taken something that was pure and beautiful and made it something that's not pure and beautiful. It's ruined, it's tarnished, it's broken. And my teacher also talks about this. He talks about having seen the mind completely clearly as it is, and how it's this beautiful, pure, pristine thing. But all around it, all over it, is all of this gunk that's just stuck to it, that's just there. And it's the light and the purity of this mind in its natural state is covered in all of this gunk and this ugliness. And today I wanted to take a closer look at this ugliness, the ugly stuff inside. I think that was the title of the talk, right? So what really are these ugly things? What are the defilements? They're generally categorized into 3 groups. So the way that it usually goes is the first group is greed, okay? The second group is anger, and the third group is delusion. Okay, those are the 3 general categories of what's called defilements, or the other word that is used sometimes is also impurities. And I kind of like the word impurities for those of you who are new. I'll try and use the word impurities a little bit more. These are the 3 categories of the impurities or the defilements of the mind. And we're not aware, a lot of the time, we're not aware that we're just literally rolling around in these defilements all day. Just a quick show of hands, maybe those of you who are on screen. Some of you, I think most of you who are on screen have been practicing for quite a while. Just put up your hand if have you seen these defilements? So just take a look at all the people who have their hands up. Okay, so the practitioners who've been practicing, thank you for your hands up and your virtual hands as well. Once you start practicing, this is what you're going to notice, right? We generally walk around our day-to-day thinking that we're good and we're kind and we're wholesome, and we like the idea of the mind being this pure, pristine, kind of holy, intact type of thing. But when we really start to take a good look, what we start to see is our states that fall under the categories of these 3 categories: greed, anger, and delusion. So I thought I would give you a few examples just now, because I really do want to make this hit home, and I want us to kind of really see how this can be true for us. A lot of the time, we think the greed, anger, and delusion are warranted. And so this is also important for us to look at. Especially the anger piece is warranted, but even the greed. Okay, so when I use the word greed, let's see, I teach a course called Communicating in Reiki, and I have this big chart that I give my students, and it has like the subtle feelings. It's called the vocabulary of emotions, and it has the subtle feelings, and then it has the intermediate feelings, and it has the intense feelings. So you can take like a subtle feeling like content, and then you can go to happy, and then you can go to elated, right? So you can see how there's different gradients or different levels. You can turn up the volume on the happiness or turn down the volume on the happiness. So make it brighter or make it less bright, more subtle. So let's go with greed first, and let's do a couple of examples about greed. The word itself is intense. The word greed sounds ugly, right? The word itself doesn't sound like something that we want to experience or that we might think that we experience. So I'm not a greedy person, I'm generous, I like giving things away. But what about when you, and this used to happen to me a lot when I worked on College Street in Toronto, and I would go on my lunch hour and I'd walk down the street and pass all these little boutiques. And you walk by your favorite shop window and you see, let's say it's a shoe store, and you see a pair of shoes in the window, and your attention goes out to the shoes, and there's a liking, and then you might even feel this sense of like leaning in or wanting to look at them better. That's greed. Right there, that's greed, right? Even just window shopping, okay, that's greed. I can even tone the word greed down a little bit for those of you who are new. We can also use the word craving, okay, craving, or maybe the most subtle would be wanting. Okay, so that's greed. We could take greed in a different direction, and in the West, where I think a lot of us live, I'm looking at the screen, I see a lot of us who are in Canada, United States, where a lot of us live, it is seen as very normal and very natural to be a go-getter. I'm not satisfied with a B minus. I want to get an A. I want to get an A plus. I want to be at the top of my class, right? And this is seen as a very worthy endeavor. You want to get into your college, or you want to get a really good job, you want to excel at your career, but that also is an example of greed or craving. We might look at it from the perspective of, let's take it further. I think maybe a lot of you aren't students, so let's take it from the perspective of in our job or career. It isn't seen as a good thing to have the same job and stay at the same level over a long period of time. It's kind of expected that you're going to go from an entry-level job to middle management, to directorship, to the C-suite or the president or whatever it might be. There's this expectation on some level that we're just going to continue to move up the food chain in our job. And when we have that feeling that I need to work harder and I need to do better and achieve more, or achieve more status or more responsibility or more prestige, that's greed, right? But in our modern world, it's seen as something that's wholesome, even though the feeling itself can be unwholesome. There is, even, let's take it in a totally different direction, okay? This week, my mom got very, very sick. She couldn't walk starting Wednesday morning. She was in extreme pain, she was yelping, she was howling, she couldn't take the medications that would help her because they would interfere with other things. And what happened over here, right? Wanting for her to be better, wanting for her to take the medication, wanting her to go to the doctors, wanting her to listen. Greed, right? That's greed. And we may think, but Salima, of course you wanted to, you wanted to help her, you wanted her to be okay. And if we look really closely, it looks like I wanted her to be okay, and I do, I want her to be okay. Underneath, where was the suffering? It was here. It was in this person, in this heart right here, that was, disliking seeing her, struggle, disliking having to carry her here and there, disliking having to leave the house and not knowing what was going to happen. There's just all the disliking happening over here. So all the ugliness, where was the ugliness? Was she the ugly one? No, the ugliness happened right here. That was where the ugly stuff was. If the mind was pure and pristine, it sure wasn't obvious at that moment because there was so much greed happening. Okay, so don't make any mistakes. This world is full of pitfalls. This world is full of experiences. This world is full of ups and downs, and that's normal and natural. That is why we are here. We are here in the human realm to experience all of them. We're not in the angelic realm. We're not in a godlike state, okay? Those beings exist on a different level. They exist in a place where there isn't as much suffering. And in fact, it's harder for them to see these things. They can't see greed as well as we can. So another category of defilement is anger, okay? And anger is the word that is commonly used. The more technical word is aversion. Okay, so you can see how anger seems very specific, but when you use the word aversion, it's much more of an umbrella term. So aversion also encompasses things like anxiety and fear. It encompasses a whole bunch of different things. So when we think of aversion, we think of it's the opposite of greed, right? So greed is leaning in. I was leaning into the shop window to look at those shoes. And aversion is disliking, pulling away, right? Being averse to whatever it is that I experienced or whatever was in front of me, right? So our world is very full of aversion these days. I probably don't have to give you a lot of examples of aversion. You can open any YouTube video and scroll down, you'll see people having aversion and using their fingers to really, let their aversion be known. You could turn on the television, and any television show that you watch, in order for it to make money, it's going to create an aversion in your mind. There's always going to be some kind of bad thing that happens that you dislike, a criminal or a bad guy or something bad that happens, right? There's always going to be the aversion, the dun dun dun, right? That's the musical cue aversion. When you hear that sound or those three notes, you know that that's the time for you to be hating whatever's going on, okay? So it's funny, I'm going to tell a cute little aside though. There was a movie that I watched several years ago by Studio Ghibli. It was like a anime film, and it was called My Neighbor Totoro. I forgot the name of the movie for a moment, but it's called My Neighbor Totoro, and it had these two girls, and they had this mom. Their mom was in the hospital. The dad was taking care of them. They moved to a new house. There were all these little gremlins in their house. It was a very cute movie. And one of the girls got lost or ran away at some point, and the other girl was looking for her. And it just seemed like such a boring movie. It was such a boring, because there was no bad guy. There was no evil, wicked witch. There was no, terrible person that was going to abduct them. And it became very clear to me, even though there was drama going on, and there was definitely aversion, they didn't use the conventional bad guy in order to create the aversion, which was quite interesting. The net effect of that was that I found the movie was adorable and it was really cute, but by some standards, that movie would have been deemed boring and not great to watch. Anyway, that's a total aside. Aversion can also come in the form of self-righteousness, right? I was in a lesson with my teacher a few days ago, and we were talking about the feeling of I told you so, right? The feeling of I told you so. And you might have this experience where someone close to you is making a decision or asks you for help, and you give them your advice, or you support them in some way, or you warn them. Let's say you warn them against a certain course of action, and maybe they'll agree with you to your face, and then they'll do the opposite later on, and then they suffer, right? They have a problem, or they wind up in a worse situation than they were in before. And what do you want to do? You want to say, I told you so, right? There's this ugly feeling that needs to have the last word, that needs to prove something, that feels like, okay, well, now you're going to suffer, and now I'm going to have to listen to your stories, and that's not a good feeling in here, and so I told you so, right? So a lot of this is very mundane stuff. This is stuff that we experience all day long, all the time. These defilements are not unusual. They're not things that come up just randomly in a blue moon, I should say. Okay, they're things that happen all the time. We're literally, like I said, it feels like we're rolling around in defilements, rolling around in the mud of the defilements. That's how it feels. The third of these three categories is called delusion. And some of you might be thinking, well, I'm not deluded. I've got my right mind. I can think. I know how to do math. I know how to make decisions. I'm in the real world. But let me ask you, how many times have you been watching a movie and you totally got swept up in the story? Have you watched a series where you were able to watch like 3 or 4 episodes and then just abandon it? Were you caught in the story? Were you able to say, oh, I'm going to watch, 3 seasons of whatever, I don't even know what people are watching these, insert the name of your favorite series and not watch any more of it? Probably can't do that, right? So why is that? It's because, and then let's go even further down the road. When the series ends, at the end of the series, when it's done, how many of us feel like, oh, it's so sad that it's over. Like, I can't watch any more of it because the story's finished and the series is concluded and they're not doing a new season. I hope I'm using the right terms, by the way. There's no next season, it's done, right? And why is that? It's because we've been deluded. We really believe that these people are real on some level. Our mind is totally in the story. We're totally engaged. We're totally affected by it. It's like, the thing that we want to do all day long is give up all of our work and just sit and watch binge watch our favorite series. It's kind of like those are our friends, the people that we identify with in the story. They're our friends, and whatever's happening to them is happening to us. Like, we're right in there with them, okay? So that's an example of when we sign up to be deluded. Like, we actually go in and do this to ourselves, right? We want to do this. And we also believe that that is relaxing, right? So how many of us have really busy lives or a lot of stuff on our plate, and I'm just gonna pretend this is a TV remote. I'm just gonna go and turn on the TV and put on my favorite series to relax. When a lot of these series they're pulling our heartstrings in this direction. It's like a tug of war, like making us hate this character and love that character and want the best for this one and want that one to go away. And that's not actually relaxing. So while we're watching these stories, we're deluded. We're completely deluded. We're being pulled into liking and disliking, into greed and aversion from being deluded. And that's why my teacher actually says this, that delusion is like the mother of defilements, because if we weren't deluded, we wouldn't get carried away in all this stuff. So that's a little foray into what the defilements are, the impurities are. Okay, so now that we understand them in an everyday context, we go and sit down and meditate. And so what happens when we meditate? Well, there's greed, there's anger, and there's delusion. Of course there is, because it's happening all day. We're training ourselves from the moment we're born to the moment we go to our grave. We're training ourselves consistently to have greed, anger, and delusion. So the mind's just used to this. So when we sit down to meditate in our practice, let's say our formal practice, and all of a sudden there's a feeling of wanting to be with our object and not let the mind stray off. Or if we notice that the mind strayed off, then the pulling back to the object, pulling back to the breath, or the mantra, whatever we're using as our object, the body, whatever we're using as our focal point, our anchor. So that's greed in our practice. Anger can come up. Let's say we're practicing and the person in the other room's making noise, or, which happens to me all the time, the other person in the next room's making noise, or let's say there's a pain somewhere in the body. And so anger or aversion comes up at that point. We want to change postures. We want to get away from that suffering, whatever that is that annoys us or that makes us feel uncomfortable. Maybe our mind is really busy, okay? And that's also delusion, right? So we're just sitting in our practice or maybe doing our walking practice, and the mind goes off and it's thinking about something that didn't happen, something that won't happen, maybe worried about something that's not happening to us, maybe worried about what's going on somewhere else, down the street or in another province or wherever. That's delusion. Okay, so these defilements, they're not just happening to non-meditators, to non-practitioners. As all of us saw, thank you for all your participation, but everyone who's a meditator, who's on screen, put their hand up and said, yes, I've seen defilements, right? And so what do we usually do, right? We usually try to suppress these things. We try to run away from them. We try and go and find some distraction. We try and fix. Okay, those are the usual things that we try and do to fix an unhappy feeling or something that we've seen in our mind that we don't like. And usually with anger or aversion. But there are certain antidotes that are taught in Dhamma, okay? And so the antidotes for each of these are things that we've heard a lot of. So, for example, the antidote for greed is generosity. Okay, this is one of the perfections. This is a state of mind, one of the many states of mind that I mentioned earlier. Generosity is a powerful antidote. Anger, the antidote for anger is metta, or loving kindness. And then for delusion, the antidote for delusion is, you guessed it, mindfulness. Okay, so mindfulness is the antidote for delusion. And I'm going to just talk a little bit about antidotes because they're not the opposites. Okay, so an opposite of greed is non-greed. Opposite of anger is non-anger. Opposite of delusion is non-delusion. Okay. Antidotes are actually things that we do or practice as a balm or as a remedy, a medicine for a poison of some sort. So an antidote is something that we actually apply or we practice, in this case we practice, to counteract a poison of the mind. Okay. So we can see the defilements as poisons in a way. They are things that are, like I said, they're dirty, they're ugly, right? So when we practice these things, when we practice generosity, when we practice mindfulness and we practice metta, is that enough? Do we think that that's enough? Let's say we're so generous and we practice mindfulness all the time and we practice metta all the time. Is that enough? Well, if we practice all of these three things, it can be enough. But we can't just only practice generosity and that's enough. We can't only just practice metta and that's enough. We absolutely need the mindfulness, which is the antidote to delusion. We need that one, and if we don't have that one, the generosity and the metta are not going to be enough. They're going to be like fixing. They're going to be like suppressing. So when we do this, when we do this fixing, it does feel like it's, we're going to distract ourselves to try and fix a problem. We're going to internalize or suppress something because we want to hold it back. We want to hold it in, or we freeze sometimes when we notice these things because we think it's going to last. And we want to just try and keep ourselves from doing something or being something that we don't want to be. And so the fixing, as you heard in the cup story, right? So we can try and suppress things or fake it, but it only lasts for so long, right? It doesn't last forever. So like I said, there is a way out, and the way out is mindfulness practice. And with mindfulness, we need both mindfulness and samadhi. We need seeing the phenomena, seeing the states of mind, okay, watching the body and the mind, and we need the type of observation, the type of seeing that's required, okay, and the samadhi is as important as the mindfulness. They work together hand in hand. And so what's samadhi? It's the type of concentration where the mind is light, it's agile, it's not pushing, it's not forcing, and it's seeing things at a distance. Okay, so it's seeing the body and the mind at a distance. It's not attached to them. It's not trying to control them. It's not trying to hold them. It's just seeing them at a distance, and it's being honest with what's coming up. So we do need some honesty and courage for this practice so that we're able to see these states as they are without interfering with them and letting them come up, okay, on their own. So I thought what we would do today, let's see if we have a bit of time. I thought what we would do today is practice a little bit of these antidotes together. Okay, so generosity is going to be hard for us to practice right now, unless you all want to whip out your wallets and give a donation to the Mindfulness Society. Feel free. But this is not what I was anticipating to do. It's not a fundraiser. So what I thought we might do in terms of the generosity is to just take a moment and reflect on the generosity that we have shown. So generosity comes in many forms. It's not just being generous with our pocketbooks. It's not just about money. Some of us might not have a lot, but we give a lot of our time. We give a lot of our care. We might give a shoulder to cry on or be a good listener. So let's just take a moment and reflect. So reflection can be very good for us in this case. So maybe think back to the last time that you were generous, that you showed someone generosity, that you actually did something that may not have been the most convenient thing for you, but you did it. And that one act of generosity, that one act of having an open heart, you don't know how far it could have gone. You don't know how far it actually went. It might have helped somebody out of a particular problem in the moment. Perhaps you gave some money to somebody who didn't have any money, who stopped you on the street. Perhaps someone, I see a lot of healers here, perhaps someone wasn't feeling well and you gave them some healing, or you brought them some medicine or some food. Maybe you picked up the phone and called someone just to say hello because you were thinking about them and you knew that they were alone or felt isolated, which is a big problem in our world today. That connection is missing. What was it like for you to just know that you did that generous act? So if you can allow yourself to feel that generosity and that feeling of extending, reaching out, even if it was not convenient for you, extending goodness to somebody else. And maybe, let's say maybe, you actually feel isolated or you feel alone at times. Maybe the generosity was to a pet. So maybe you have a cat or a dog at home. Maybe you have a pet fish or a turtle. Maybe your kid or your kid's kid has a pet gerbil or a turtle that they never take care of, but they're there and you end up feeding them. It's not your job, right? Maybe it's not your pet. But what was it like for you to know that you supported the life of a being, no matter how small? You're allowed to feel the sense of goodness in your heart. So generosity is a wholesome state. So this is important. If you can, try and practice generosity every day, even in the smallest of ways. And when you don't have the opportunity to practice generosity, then reflect on the generosity that you've practiced already. I learned something really important recently, and that was that, not recently actually, this is a long time ago, but I've talked about it recently with someone, and that is that you recreate karma when you revisit things over and over again. So when you revisit past pain, past unhappiness, I'm just going to bundle it up and say unhappiness. When you revisit those things in your mind over and over, you are recreating the state of mind over and over again. When you recreate something that's wholesome, like generosity, you're actually bringing more generosity into your mind. You're actually conditioning your mind to have more generosity. And the good karma of that actually follows. So you will be more generous, and you will reap the rewards or the benefits that that generosity brings back to you. So even if you can't practice generosity, okay, reflect on your previous generosity. All right, so what was that? That was greed. Okay, that was the antidote to greed. Okay, what's the second one? Anger or aversion. We'll say aversion for now. So this is a tough one, a heavy, tough, unhappy one, right? And the antidote to aversion is metta. So let's just take a moment and practice for just a short period of time, a very short period of time. Practice a little metta. We can practice for ourselves first. And we just usually use the words, may I be happy, may I be peaceful. So as you are sitting here now, breathing in and allowing yourself to feel happy. Breathe in happy, breathe out, feeling peaceful. Breathing in, feeling happy, breathing out, feeling peaceful. If it's too hard for you in this moment to feel happy, then breathe in and allow yourself to feel a sense of safety. Breathe in feeling safe, and breathe out feeling at ease. Let's just practice this for a few moments. For yourself, you are worthy of this. You don't have to send it out to every Tom, Dick, and Harry. Start with yourself. May I be happy? May I be peaceful? May I be happy? May I be peaceful? May I be safe? May I be at ease? May I be safe? May I be at ease? May I be happy? May I be peaceful? May I be safe? May I be at ease? Let's take one more deep breath. Breathing in happy, and on the exhale, breathing out, feeling peaceful. And then we can share it with everyone. So let's just go to everyone. Why put a boundary on this? We don't have to bring it to the close people to us and the people down the street. Let's just everybody, all beings. May all beings everywhere be happy. It just feels a little bit brighter all of a sudden. May all beings everywhere be peaceful. May all beings everywhere be safe. May all beings everywhere be at ease. May every kind of being that there may be, near or far, large or small, seen or unseen, known to us, unknown to us, those weak, strong, those born, those yet to be born, may all beings, all kinds of beings everywhere, be safe, be at ease, be happy, be peaceful, including us. We are part of all beings, including us. Just notice what's the state of mind right now. Which of these many, many states is here now in this moment? Is there metta? Is there something else? Okay, so we've done 2 antidotes, very briefly, albeit very briefly, okay? And then the 3rd antidote is mindfulness. Remembering that mindfulness comes with samadhi, that particular type of concentration that is light, that is agile, that doesn't get stuck or hold to things, and that sees things impartially at a bit of a distance. If you've been practicing the recollection of generosity and the metta, you might actually feel a sense of being ready to practice mindfulness. So the practices of recollecting your generosity and the practice of metta are beautiful precursors for mindfulness practice. They can put your mind in a state that feels stable enough where samadhi is accessible to us. So remembering that we want our mind to be light and agile and not holding and not grasping, and seeing this body and this mind impartially. And I'm going to guide us through a body scan. I don't usually do body scans, but I'll do a body scan for us. And what I'd like for us to do in order to make this body scan mindful is notice when there's greed, notice when there's aversion, notice when there's delusion. Okay, so the greed might be wanting a body part to look like this or feel like this, or wanting me to talk faster or slower, or wanting the body scan to be finished, or wanting to go and drink a cup of tea, or wanting to go to bed, okay? Notice greed, okay? As we're going through the body scan, notice aversion, wanting or aversion meaning not wanting, so not liking how this body feels, not liking what's happening right now, not having a thought come in and not liking the thought, okay? I just had a bit of an interruption there. Okay, there we go, we're back. So if you notice any anger, maybe there's, or aversion, maybe there's a sound, not liking the sound, wanting something that's happening to stop happening. Maybe there's a pain somewhere in the body, wanting the pain to go away, hating the pain, okay? And then finally, with delusion, we're going to notice as we're going through this body scan, notice when the mind goes off to think about something that's not the body scan, okay? So anything to do with the body scan, whether it's the elbow or the fingertip or the left eye or whatever it is, okay? Wherever we are, if you're there, and you're able to notice that you're there. And if the mind has gone and scattled off to like dinner or what am I going to do tomorrow or something else, what did that person say? As soon as you notice that the mind had left, you saw delusion, okay? You saw an instance of delusion, the mind doing something other than being here, being present. So let's just do this it's not going to be a very long body scan, it's going to be very short. So I'm also going to allow this body scan to be light and agile, okay? I'm not going to expect you to sit perfectly. I don't need you to have your eyes closed. I don't need your hands to be in any particular posture or position. I don't need you to sit with your legs on the floor or your feet on the floor or anything like that. Just be how you are, okay? However you are is how you are, it's fine. So we'll just start by bringing our awareness to the top of the head, to the forehead, to the eyes, to the ears, to the nose, to the lips, to the tongue inside the mouth. Is it still or is it moving? If it's moving, did you decide to move it? the back of the head, the throat, shoulders, upper arms, elbows, forearms, wrists, hands, left pointer finger, right thumb, upper chest, rib cage, belly, the entire back, hips, the space between the hips, bottom, thighs, noticing any difference between the backs of the thighs and the fronts, the knees, the lower legs, ankles, tops of the feet, toes, left big toe and the right big toe, soles of the feet, and bring awareness to the whole body sitting exactly as it's sitting now. Bring the awareness to the center of the body, feeling it expanding and relaxing with the in-breath and the out-breath. Feeling the eyeballs, whether they're still or moving. Sensing the nostrils and the coolness of the in-breath and the warmth of the out-breath. And feel free to take a deep breath. And if your eyes were closed, you can open them again. Okay, so that was going pretty quick. Your attention, I was trying to hold your attention as much as I could. Just a quick show of hands, anyone who's on screen, did anyone notice greed, wanting something? Wanting something to be different than it is, wanting, okay. Anyone notice aversion, disliking something? Okay, lots of aversion, excellent. Anyone notice your mind going away to something else? Delusion. Yay! I'm applauding you all. Well done. Okay, so you can see that this stuff isn't unusual, right? It's stuff that happens all the time. Like I said earlier, we're kind of rolling around in it, right? There's this pure mind there. And with practice, what begins to happen is each time we're able to see with mindfulness and samadhi, we're able to see that guk, the ugly stuff that I was talking about today, the impurities. Every time we see it with mindfulness and samadhi, there's the ability to lose some of it, to have some of it drop away and let go of us. And this happens when we practice until the point of what's called wisdom. Instead of being ignorant and having the wrong view that I'm a self and things are permanent and sometimes I'm happy and sometimes I'm not happy. Instead of believing all that, we start to see things exactly as they are. With mindfulness and samadhi, we start to see the true nature of this body and this mind. We see them as they are, honestly, with samadhi, with mindfulness. And when that happens, we have this beautiful moment where whatever the defilement was in that moment, that defilement drops away. It actually disengages. So the defilement arises, the mind or mindfulness sees it, and the defilement will drop away. Now, when that drops away, it's an important moment. That's called having a moment, like a vipassana insight, seeing one of the three characteristics, right? And we're not practicing so that the defilements will go away. We're practicing to see the truth, and the defilements will drop off on their own. They drop off on their own. Okay, so also don't hate the defilements. If we didn't have them, we wouldn't be able to practice. So I talked earlier just for a moment about us being in this human realm and angels being in higher realms and gods and deities being in these higher realms. They have less defilements, so they have less to work with. Okay? So let yourself be natural. This is one of the first tenets or the first principles of correct practice. Let your mind be natural. When your mind is natural, you're then going to be able to see these things coming up, whether you're practicing or in your daily life. And here's a hint: the more that you practice formally and set aside some time, have an object, right? Either the breath or a mantra, whatever you're using, okay? So that you're conditioning your mind to be able to see these things. You're just seeing these things over and over again. And then when you go off in your day, you've been sufficiently practicing that this knowledge or this seeing, the mindfulness, comes up by itself, right? And that's when the rubber hits the road. That's when these things start to dissolve and fall away. So this is reminding me of, it's kind of reminding me of being in Thailand. And while I was there, we had, there were two groups of students who came by. And when I was with the second group, we had gone to visit one of the teachers, an incredibly powerful teacher who lived way out in the middle of nowhere, up in the hills. And his name's Ajahn Shairat. And it's reminding me of something. He said a lot of really powerful things when we went to visit him. And one of those things that he said was, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to not be okay. So when we see the ugly stuff inside, use it. Don't get swayed by it. Don't get gobbled up by it. Don't ride the wave of the defilements and say, oh, I'm angry, I'm just going to stay angry. See the anger. Know the anger. Know what it feels like. Know the aversion. Okay, I should call it aversion. Know the aversion. Or if there's greed, don't just get swept up in it. Know that there's greed there. Know what it's like. Understand it in that way. If there's delusion, if the mind is lost in stories and anxious, thought itself into a very anxious state and not okay, see it. It's okay to not be okay. And it's skillful to know when we're not okay with mindfulness. All right. I feel like I've talked your faces off this evening. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. I appreciate all of you. And I really hope that all of you practice and take up this very, very important, really, really powerful practice and do this not for me, but do this for yourselves. Just being in Thailand, going back to that, being in Thailand and seeing practitioners who've been practicing for a very long time and actually seeing how they live and how they are and their demeanor, not just when they're talking and teaching, but behind the scenes. I can honestly say I don't know what the mind of an enlightened being is because I'm not there yet myself, but I can honestly say that it gets better. It gets better with practice. Okay, so let that be a little encouragement from me to you. So before I wrap up, I always like to end our practice with, I'm going to bring my palms together. I'll invite you to do the same. We're going to share the merits with all beings and practice a little metta, one last metta for ourselves and all beings. May all beings everywhere share in the merits of our practice together, and may all beings, including us, may all of us here and all beings everywhere be happy, be peaceful, be safe, be at ease, be well, be healthy, and free from suffering. All right, thank you once again.
Thank you so much, Salima. So many wonderful tidbits tonight. I felt like I wish I had a pen. I need to write down all of these amazing notes. So I hope everyone enjoyed the talk as much as I did and your wonderful activities. The body scan. I needed something that was fluid and quick and not hazy and daisy. So thank you. And just so everyone knows, we are back in 2 weeks. We'll be getting the newsletter out later this week. So we're not on this coming Sunday for Labor Day weekend in Canada. We are returning again on September 8th at 8 p.m. Jess will once again be joining us and offering a guided meditation and mindfulness talk. Yeah, go ahead, Selena.
Sorry.
It's fine.
I thought I would take this opportunity to, a lot of you know this already, but take this opportunity to remind folks and to let folks know, make an announcement that Jess is starting an Insight for Mindfulness for Insight course on the 4th, I believe, on the Wednesday, whatever that first Wednesday is of September. So please join. He's a great teacher. He's my teacher. He's a teacher to many people here. And it's a really, really powerful way to start your own mindfulness practice, and with a really great teacher if you don't have one. So sorry for the interruption, but I needed to say it.
All good. And thank you for the plug. I'm sure Jess will be appreciative of that. If anyone wants to learn more about any of his courses, feel free to reach out to Salima or myself or Rhonda or Susie or Karen. We can all give you some additional details and vouch for how amazing those courses are. I'm sure all of us will be there. So please join us again in 2 weeks on September 8th with Jess, or join us at the course starting on September 4th. But until then, I hope everyone has a wonderful couple weeks. Thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you again, Salima, for sharing such a beautiful talk and meditation with us. And until then, we'll see everyone soon.